June 29th, 1978. It was mid-afternoon, and the desert heat lay thick on the bedroom town of Scottsdale, Arizona. A young actress, Victoria Berry, arrived at apartment 132 in the Winfield apartment complex. Home to Bob Crane, known to millions as television's wisecracking Colonel Hogan. 5 years removed from the television hit, Crane was in Scottsdale in the hopes of jump-starting his career. When Berry arrived at Crane's apartment, the front door was open. Inside, it was dark. Victoria Berry wandered through the living room, down a hallway, and into the master bedroom. There she found a body. In 1978, Lieutenant Ron Dean headed up the investigation inside Crane's apartment.
I was called in the mid-afternoon after the body was discovered.
Blood was Dean's first clue. Pools of it found under the victim's head, smears at the foot of the bed, and a trail that led down a hallway to the front door. Clearly, this was how the killer had made his exit.
He did not move around after he got hit. The only thing that is moved, though, is that pillow. The pillow is pulled away from his head, which allowed the killer to put this electrical cord around his neck.
The evidence pointed to Crane being attacked while he slept. The attacker, someone he knew. Someone who had access to and was familiar with the apartment's layout. As Dean worked over the crime scene, Bob Crane's phone rang.
I remember the first one, and he identified himself as John Carpenter.
John Carpenter was a friend of Crane's. He had been out on the town with Crane the previous evening and flown to Los Angeles that morning. An hour after the first call, Carpenter called again. An hour and a half later, a third call. Dean was uneasy with the timing of the calls. Their tone made him even more suspicious.
At this time, I was kind of wondering at the end of the conversation where I said, well, give me your number, I will call you back, why he didn't ask why a police lieutenant was in his friend's apartment.
John Carpenter had just made the top of Dean's suspect list. Dean dispatched a detective to track down and impound the rental car Carpenter had used in Scottsdale.
When he found the car, he saw things in it that he wanted to preserve, including what appeared to be him to be droplets of blood.
Blood smears were found on the door panel, on the toggle switch of the window, and on the passenger side of the car. In 1978, DNA profiling was not available to police. Instead, they tested the smears from the rental car for blood type. It came back as type B, the same as Bob Crane's. Even more telling, type B is relatively rare, with only 10% of the general population sharing it. The focus on Carpenter was sharpening. 2 days into the investigation, police began to look for a motive. They focused on the relationship between Carpenter and Crane. In his last years, Crane had enjoyed the life of a playboy, dating scores of women. According to police, John Carpenter had shared in that lifestyle.
Carpenter was described to me by several people who knew him and Bob Crane as a hanger-on.
You know, I'm not saying this to embarrass anyone or anything, but he did say that John Carpenter got his leftovers.
Gail Rogers was 29 years old when she met Bob Crane shortly before his death. She dated the star a few times and described him as a man in transition, looking to cut the ties to his wild past. Police believed this to be a motive for murder.
He wanted to change his relationship with John Carpenter. He said that he wanted to meet someone and settle down, but through all the people that he knew, he still felt very, very lonely.
On the night he died, Crane was supposed to go out with Gail. She did not feel well and canceled. Instead, Crane hit the town, eventually hooking up with Carpenter at the Safari nightclub, where the two allegedly argued. it was the last time Crane was seen alive.
The crux of the case was that John Carpenter and Bob Crane had had a falling out. Several people had seen them have a disagreement.
I think he did enter that apartment door by some kind of means, or whether he had a key, an extra key or something. Found Crane in a state of sleep, and took the murder instrument and struck him on the head.
There was blood and tissue inside the apartment from the injuries to Mr. Crane. There was blood on the door leading out. There was blood in Mr. Carpenter's car. And it was all the same blood type.
Scottsdale police felt their case against Carpenter was a lock. The Maricopa County prosecutor disagreed, feeling the blood found in Carpenter's rental car simply could not support a charge of murder. The rift between the DA and police became a rupture in July of 1978. The district attorney's public decision not to prosecute John Carpenter stopped the investigation cold. On June 25, 1990, the Maricopa County prosecutor decided to take a fresh look at Scottsdale's most famous mystery. Cold case detective Jim Raines would have to start from scratch.
We're going to have to open this one.
On a closet shelf in a storage room, he stumbled upon a series of previously unknown photographs taken of the inside of John Carpenter's rental car. One showing what appeared to be a piece of human tissue adhering to the door panel. It would become the linchpin of Raines' cold case investigation.
I knew that was tissue. I knew that the person that took the photograph knew it was tissue because it was a close-up, zoom in on the fragment of tissue.
According to police, in 1978, the county's Department of Public Service processed Carpenter's rental car. At that point, Dean's detectives relinquished control of the vehicle. Somewhere in the bureaucratic shuffle, the tissue simply disappeared. Even without it, Raines felt he had discovered a critical link in his case, enough to arrest John Carpenter for murder.
Well, when I saw the tissue, I knew that we were at a major turning point, and I knew what that meant to the murder scene. Blood smears on a door, type B, that's good, but the tissue, that's where it was.
The biggest difficulty in that case was that the evidence was there all along, and we had to offer an explanation as to why it wasn't used, seen, and worked on, and processed and charged before. That's what I thought. And the evidence vanished.
Bob Schutz was given the task of prosecuting Carpenter for murder. The case would turn on the controversial photo. How would it play with the jury?
They must have been thinking that, what is this really that we have a picture of?
We said it was tissue. 5 pathologists all examined the photograph, and they examined that photograph without any prep whatsoever. I hit them with it cold. I asked them what it was. They all said it's tissue. Okay, well, it's still a photograph, and it's not tissue.
Carpenter's trial lasted 7 weeks. In his defense, Carpenter argued a lack of hard evidence, a mysterious photo of alleged human tissue, no DNA match. In the end, it was more than enough for an acquittal.
When they called and said that the jury was back, I started to walk toward the courtroom from our office. Just in that trip, walk, it just came to me that it's too old. They're not going to do it. They're not going to buy it. It's too old. And sure enough, it was a not guilty.
John Carpenter had been cleared. And to this day, the mystery of who killed Bob Crane only deepens.